For Crema Media's Polity, I'm Sane Dhlamini, Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs and former ANC Treasurer Dr. Zweli Mkhize joins me to discuss 2019 elections. Welcome, Dr. Mkhize.
Thank you very much, Sane, and
Minister,
all your viewers.
Thank you very much for your time. Today we've heard that there is a possible shutdown in Pretoria, like we've seen in Alex. What do you think? Why do you think our country is experiencing so many protests as we are approaching elections?
Well, I think there are issues which are underlying the protests. As much as we don't like the shutdowns, and particularly when it comes to the destruction of property, which we completely discourage, as well as the banning of barricades, hurting of property or hurting people, we really discourage that. We do understand, though, that there are issues that are underlying in this case. Generally, again, issues around service delivery, around communication of service delivery. But I think that at the back of all of this is the high level of unemployment, the high level of poverty, the low level of growth in the economy. These issues, of course, exacerbate criminality, and this combination basically means that people every now and again have the pressure to try and see what is it that can be done to improve their conditions. And so the service delivery issues become more the symptoms of an underlying unhappy, uneasy life that our people are going through in townships, in villages, etc.
Dr. Mkhize, you are one of the people who were tasked to follow up on the matter that we saw transpiring at Alex. Yes. Can you update us on the matter?
Yes, we have had a team put up by the President, and now we've got what we call an interministerial team on service delivery. Now this team basically intervenes in areas where we think that national government needs to work with provincial and local government to unblock the system and try and coordinate matters and make issues to move better. So in this case, we've had, as instructed by President, a meeting with the Alex Shutdown Committee. We had an occasion for them to take us through their memorandum, their issues of concern. We've also had a meeting with the Alexandra Property Owners Association, and these again gave us a fair insight into the challenges that they face. Now there has been a number of meetings. I've had a meeting with Mayor Mashaba and Mayor with MEC and Premier of Gauteng. We've had a whole joint meeting where national government ministers, the Premier and MECs, the municipality, the mayor and MMCs, and then various officials of government. We've got a team that we set up where the Directors General of COCTA and Human Settlement have sat down to analyze the problems and then come back with a presentation of what actions need to be taken. I would say there are basically three groups of issues. The first group of issues are day-to-day service delivery issues, issues of rubbish collection, dumping, filth in the area, which the municipality needs to deal with, the issues of water, sanitation, particularly the spilling of sewage into the streets, which the municipality needs to deal with, and in some instances where people are putting up structures and letting sewage go out into open veld, into the graveyard, into the rivers, and so on. That's all service delivery issues that needs to be given attention to. Then you've got issues which are more bordering on criminality, where the crime levels are high, then where people go up and put up structures where in a place which is not for a normal human settlement, where people put up extensions on buildings which are not planned, which are not safe, and therefore they put up the double-story buildings which have got no inspection and got a risk of collapse. They put up people on flood zones, and then the numbers of people who are on dump sites, all of this, which when there's a flood or there's a problem, then of course it will be causing damage to people, to their properties and to their lives. Then there are others where there are settlements which are put under the high voltage pylons and with illegal connections of electricity. Now there are bylaws that the municipality is supposed to be implementing. There's a lot of illegal settlements that should have actually been stopped from settling. For example, there's a unit against land invasion that's supposed to be activated so that they can regularize how people settle. All of these issues are supposed to be acted upon, and then of course the flooding of undocumented foreign immigrants creates a complexity when it comes to managing criminality, because there is crime in the area, but then this compounds it. All of these issues, when we put them together, they require the crime prevention and justice cluster to be activated across all 3 levels of government. Then the third area is the issue of the long-term overall development of Alex. There's something that has been in the process for a long time. There was a statement of intent which was bringing together civil society, landowners, government, etc., to talk about how to settle the issue of the land ownership so that government can then develop the area to improve the housing issues. They put up some funds already to improve the sanitation, get bigger pipes and bigger plants and all of that. All of that was put in place. But it was not followed up because the process stalled. I think miscommunication between province, between local government, which was supposed to implement, and the provincial government is an issue that we needed to look at and unlock, because there was already a plan to put up densification, flats, and so on. Now, you need to clear some site, put up more development, settle people, and then move to the next level. There's land that's been identified so that some of the land could be used as an exchange, as a land to decant some of the dwellings and so on. That process stalled. Now we were meeting to try and look at how to activate that process again back into motion. In reality, what you're seeing in Alex is a problem that's happening everywhere. There's huge rapid migration from all over the country and from across our country. Then there's unplanned settlements which are unstable and unhealthy, and they need to be stopped. Then you need to have alternative accommodation where the size of land where you have people, we will not be able to settle them with RDP houses. You need a different approach, densification, high-rise buildings, where you have got a high concentration of people like they do in most of the cities in the world. What we are seeing here is the same thing that's happening all over the world, and what we need to do is to move fast as government, together with private sector, because government alone won't be able to deal with this issue. You need a lot of investment from private sector as well. So we need to get into that mode quickly so that we can stop the favelas of Rio de Janeiro, where the entire hillside is plastered in checks, and then you can't control crime, you can't bring in sanitation, you can't control rodents, you can't control diseases and so on, and we can't allow that. We need to make sure that it works. But also another one, which is a serious indictment between us as a democratic government, is that we have got we're presiding in that area over the worst form of inequality that can be recorded anywhere. Alexandra is amongst the most poorest townships. And a stone throw away, which is within the same kilometer, you've actually got Sane. Sane is the most wealthy, is the wealthiest piece of real estate in the whole of African continent. Now, why do we get this perpetuation of inequality, poverty, and disparity, high unemployment level, poorly planned settlement, and across the road is the most luxurious form of accommodation and the best business center for in the whole continent. So we need to actually have a planning process that bridges the gap. We have our approach, which we call the Integrated Urban Development Framework, which is supposed to actually help us to ensure that the planning is right across. When you do investments and economic development, it must actually take into account that all of those people there must benefit from the new development, and they must be participating in that development. You need to up the level of socio-economic development of the people, so that you can then improve on their quality of life, you can improve on their level of employment, and then in that process they can be party to fighting crime together. They can be party to overall development and contributing to the economy. Now, it's actually a very interesting example of how we can actually change things, and it should actually be used as a pilot. And here, to solve the issue of Alex, it's a long-term issue, it's a government issue, it's a private sector issue, it's a civil society issue, it's a safety issue, it's an issue of all of us combined having to look at what's the ideal South African society want to create.
We recently marked 2 decades since the first democratic elections that were held in '94. What can your department do to make sure that you improve service delivery and then get rid or maybe like reduce the level of the service protests that we see?
Yeah, the number of protests have been increasing, and the reason why they've been increasing is because it's a combination. On the one side, it's an indication of successes. On the other side, it's an indication of failures. On the other side, it's also a reflection of poor communication. Now, what tends to happen is that when people realize that, you know, human settlements were being constructed, more houses were built, water, sanitation, in some of the shacks and some of the townships were being upgraded. That attracted a lot more people to come in and demand exactly the same services. Now, those people who came in unplanned for, unbudgeted for, and the problem is that whilst we are dealing with those who were there before, the new settlers who would have come in from different villages into that new township, when they come in, they demand services that now end up creating an in situ upgrade. And in this process of in situ upgrade, you end up having to, you know, try and resolve the problems without doing a plan that will fundamentally change the whole area. Some of the people in these townships are coming into an area which is dolomitic and they can't be settled there. Some of them are in areas where it's not suitable for human settlement, etc., etc. So the one issue there has been just the fact that the successes have actually brought in more people whose aspirations have actually been lifted. They would also like the same service, and it's not unfair for people to say, okay, we'd like the same service as well. But also the fact that once you've put up the services, you up the level of the living of the people. You see, once you put in houses, good sanitation, flushing toilets, hot shower, and so on in an RDP house, you must make sure that the road is tarred, because their clothes are going to get dirty, and then they want now money to be able to buy television, they want to be able to charge their phones, they must be able to, so they must get jobs where they can actually get money to do, even the youth, their airtime and so on. See, simple things you take for granted, actually where they feel the pressure of unemployment, you see. So that's the one issue. On the other hand, there are obviously issues. Now, this is an issue of the resource constraints which I'm referring to. The second issue refers to the issues of bad communication or poor communication. Now, when we did the analysis of the protests have been increasing from 2004 to date. In the first few years, around 2004, there would have been about 40, 60 protests per year. But over a period, they've increased. I think the last year, there were over 170 in 1 year. Now, the numbers are increasing, but also the violent nature is also increasing. 83% of the protests are violent. Now, part of the problem is when people feel that they can only be heard if something burns, and therefore they become destructive. Now, it's a very problematic approach. But in some instances, 40% of the protests are due to a combination of two things, either perception of corruption or attitude towards the local councillor. That combination means that we can do a lot with communication, and that is what we're going out to communities to say they must focus on that. Then, of course, the others will be water, electricity, etc., etc. Now, in the analysis we've done about the workings of the municipalities, we identified 5 key areas where we see that the municipalities were going through challenges. First one is on issues of governance and administration. The other area is issues of finance and revenue collection. The other issue is issue of infrastructure and service delivery challenges. And then the other one is fraud, corruption, and issues of criminality. And fifth one is political instability. In a number of areas, these issues are factors that we are focusing on trying to resolve so as to improve the performance of municipalities so that we can address the issues that we're talking about.